love, pain, truth.
The large house was quiet, too quiet
You
for
were
a
the
woman who had
best
spent
of
her
them,
entire
my
life
sons.
filling it with laughter and family. Eleanor sat in her favorite armchair, looking out the window at the perfectly manicured
I
garden.
wish you were
At
still
72,
here.
she had everything a person could ask for. A beautiful home,
made me so
excellent
proud,
health,
my boys.
and more than enough money to live
My
comfortably for the
Julian.
rest of her days.
My
But as she
Thomas.
traced the rim of her china tea cup, she
I
felt a
gave them
heavy knot in her
everything.
stomach that money couldn't fix. Her
But
thoughts
they've
drifted
just
to her two
forgotten.
sons, Julian and Thomas. They were grown men now, with families of their own and successful careers. Eleanor loved them dearly. She had raised them alone after her husband passed away, sacrificing her own desires to give them the best education and opportunities. But lately, something had changed. Whenever they called, or when they came to visit, the conversations always seemed to circle back to the same topic: money. They didn't ask how she was feeling or what she was doing for fun. They wanted advice on investments, or they complained about how expensive their lives were becoming. Just last week, Julian had called. He hadn't asked about her doctor's appointment. He had asked if she was planning to sell the vacation house, and if so, if he could have a head start on the bidding. Thomas had sent a long email the day before, detailing his financial troubles and subtly suggesting that an early inheritance would help him out greatly. It broke Eleanor's heart to feel like a bank account rather than a mother. She needed to know the truth. Were they really this shallow, or was she just being paranoid and sensitive? The idea popped into her head slowly, a dangerous plan that made her hands shake. If she wasn't a wealthy widow, if she had nothing to offer them, would they still want to sit at a table with her? Would they still care? Eleanor decided she had to find out. The next morning, she drove her car to a part of the city she rarely visited. She parked blocks away from a thrift store and walked inside, keeping her head low. She bought a pair of worn-out loafers that were slightly too small, a faded wool coat that smelled faintly of old dust, and a shapeless dress that looked like it had seen better decades. She felt a pang of guilt as she paid, wondering what her late husband would say, but she pushed the thought away. This was for her family. She then went to see a woman named Martha, a retired makeup artist who used to work in the theater. Martha was an old friend, and when Eleanor explained her plan, leaving out the part about it being her own sons, Martha agreed to help. Sitting in the high-back chair in Martha's small living room, Eleanor closed her eyes as Martha worked on her face. She applied creams and powders to age Eleanor's skin, adding deep lines around her eyes and mouth. She used a gray spray to dull the shine in Eleanor's white hair and messed it up so it looked unkempt. When Eleanor finally opened her eyes and looked in the mirror, she gasped. The woman staring back was a stranger. She looked tired, broken, and incredibly poor. She looked like someone who had spent years sleeping on the streets or struggling to survive. "You look the part," Martha said softly, handing Eleanor a worn purse that smelled of mothballs. "Are you sure you want to do this, Eleanor?" Eleanor took a deep breath, her heart pounding against her ribs. "I have to, Martha. I have to know." That evening, Eleanor took a taxi to the Velvet Spoon. She couldn't drive her own car. It was too recognizable. She asked the driver to drop her off 2 blocks away. The wind was cold, biting at her cheeks as she walked down the sidewalk. She pulled the ratty coat tighter around herself, shivering not just from the cold, but from the nerves bubbling in her stomach. When she reached the restaurant, the warm glow of the chandeliers spilled out onto the street. Through the glass windows, she could see people dressed in expensive suits and gowns, laughing and drinking wine. It was a world she lived in every day, but tonight, she felt like an outsider. She pushed the heavy front door open. A blast of warm, fragrant air hit her face, filled with the smells of roasted garlic and fresh bread. Almost immediately, the maitre d' stepped in front of her. He was a tall, young man with a crisp black suit. His smile was polite, but his eyes were cold as he looked her up and down. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, lowering his voice so the other patrons wouldn't hear. "I think you might have the wrong door. This is a private establishment." Eleanor felt her face flush with heat. This was it. This was the reality she was stepping into. She straightened her posture, forcing herself to stay in character. She made her voice sound raspy and weak. I am meeting my sons," she whispered, trembling slightly. "They are waiting for me." The maitre d' frowned. looking around the room as if expecting to see someone coming to claim her. "And what is their name, ma'am?" "Julian and Thomas," she said. "They are in the back booth." He sighed, clearly annoyed, but he couldn't just throw an old woman out without checking. "Fine, follow me. But please, try not to disturb the other guests." Eleanor walked slowly through the restaurant, her worn shoes clicking softly on the marble floor. She felt the eyes of everyone in the room on her. Waiters paused with trays of silver and crystal. Diners stopped their conversations to stare. It was a humiliating feeling, but Eleanor kept her head down, focused on the booth at the far end of the room. There they were. Julian and Thomas were sitting in a large, circular booth. They looked handsome and confident, dressed in tailored blazers with silk ties. They were laughing, swirling expensive scotch in crystal glasses. For a moment, Eleanor's heart swelled with love. They were her boys. They looked so much like their father. But then she remembered why she was here. She took a deep breath and walked right up to the edge of their table. They didn't notice her at first. They were too busy arguing playfully about which stock to buy next. "Excuse me," Eleanor said, her voice shaking. Julian turned his head first. His smile vanished instantly when he saw the disheveled old woman standing too close to his table. He recoiled slightly, moving back against the leather seat. "Can I help you?" Julian asked, his voice sharp and dismissive. He didn't recognize his own mother. He didn't see the woman who had bandaged his scraped knees or read him bedtime stories. He only saw a nuisance. Thomas looked up next, his expression twisting into one of irritation. "I think you have the wrong table, lady." Eleanor's heart hammered against her ribs so hard it hurt. This was the moment. She tightened her grip on the strap of her old purse. She looked into the eyes of her sons, searching for a spark of kindness, a trace of the love she used to feel. But there was nothing there, just impatience and annoyance. I don't mean to bother you," she stammered, acting the part perfectly. "But I knew your mother. A long time ago. And I have lost everything. I have nowhere to go. I was hoping you could help me." The silence at the table was deafening. Julian looked at Thomas, and Thomas looked at Julian. They didn't see a human being in need. They saw a problem. Eleanor sat down slowly in the empty chair opposite them, without waiting for an invitation. She was testing them, pushing the boundaries to see how they would react. "Please," she whispered, "just a warm meal, or a place to stay for the night. I have nowhere else to turn." Julian leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. He didn't care about her sob story. He didn't care about the connection to his mother. He only cared about his evening being ruined. He signaled for the waiter, his face hardening. This was not the greeting a mother expects, but it was the truth Eleanor had traveled so far to find. The air around the table seemed to freeze the moment Julian signaled for the waiter. He didn't wave politely. He snapped his fingers, a sharp, arrogant sound that cut through the low hum of conversation in the restaurant. Eleanor sat frozen in the chair, her hands clutching the worn strap of her purse. She felt small, invisible, and yet entirely exposed. "Excuse me," Julian said to the young waiter who hurried over, looking concerned. "We have a situation here. This woman is bothering us. She seems to have wandered in from the street." The waiter looked from Julian's angry face to Eleanor's frightened one. He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Sir, is she with you?" "Absolutely not," Thomas chimed in, his voice dripping with disdain. He didn't even look at Eleanor as he spoke, staring instead at the polished silverware on the table. "We are trying to discuss private family business. Please ask her to leave." Eleanor felt a physical pain in her chest, like a heavy stone pressing down on her lungs. These were her sons, the boys she had rocked to sleep when they had fevers, the boys she had cheered for at every soccer game and graduation. Now, they were looking at a human being in distress and seeing nothing more than a piece of trash that needed to be taken out. I just need a little help," Eleanor whispered, forcing her voice to tremble. She looked at Thomas, searching for a shred of the kindness he used to show stray dogs as a child. "Thomas, please. You have such a kind face. You remind me of someone I used to know." Thomas flinched as if she had insulted him. He leaned away from the table, pulling his jacket around himself as if her poverty were contagious. "Don't call me Thomas," he snapped. "And I don't have any cash. If you're looking for a handout, try the shelter down on 4th Street. "I'm not asking for cash," Eleanor lied. "I'm just so hungry. It's been 2 days since I ate. I thought Since you knew my friend Eleanor, you might spare a plate." Julian laughed, a cold, dry sound. "Friend of Eleanor? Mom has expensive taste. She doesn't hang around with people like you." He turned back to the waiter. "Just bring us our usual. And bring her a glass of water so she stops complaining." The waiter nodded awkwardly and hurried away, leaving Eleanor sitting in silence. She wanted to scream. She wanted to stand up and shout, "I am Eleanor. I am your mother." But she knew she couldn't. Not yet. She had to see how far this would go. She had to see if there was any limit to their cruelty. When the waiter returned a few minutes later, he carried a tray loaded with steaming plates. He set a large, juicy steak in front of Julian and a lobster tail in front of Thomas. The smell of butter and garlic filled the air, making Eleanor's empty stomach growl loudly. The waiter placed a small glass of ice water in front of her, looking down at the table with an expression of pity that made Eleanor want to weep. "Thanks," Julian grumbled, already cutting into his meat. Finally, Eleanor wrapped her hands around the cold glass of water, just to have something to hold on to. "Sir," she said to the waiter softly, I don't have any money, but maybe I could wash dishes? Or just a small bowl of soup. I don't mind sitting in the corner." Julian slammed his fork down on the plate with a loud clatter that turned the heads of the people at the next table. "Oh, for goodness sake," he exploded. "We are trying to eat here. Can't you just drink your water and be quiet?" "I'm sorry," Eleanor whispered, tears welling in her eyes. These tears weren't acting anymore. They were real, born from a deep, crushing realization. "I just didn't think it would be like this." "Like what?" Thomas asked, his mouth full of lobster. He wiped his face with a linen napkin, treating Eleanor with a rudeness he would never show to a business colleague. "Look, life is tough. You made bad choices. Don't make them our problem." Eleanor watched them eat. They didn't savor the food. They inhaled it, talking loudly about stock market crashes and the new luxury car Thomas wanted to buy. They complained about their struggles, how expensive private school was for Julian's kids, how the maintenance on the beach house was rising. They complained about having no money while eating a meal that cost more than most people made in a week. It was a sickening spectacle. Eleanor thought of all the times she had gone without, so they could have extra. She remembered wearing the same winter coat for 10 years so Julian could have braces. She remembered skipping dinners out to save for Thomas's college tuition. She had drained her own savings to build their lives. And now, when faced with someone who had nothing, someone they didn't know was their mother, they couldn't even spare a crust of bread. "Boys," Eleanor tried again, her voice barely audible over the noise of the restaurant. "Eleanor, she was a good mother. She taught me to share. She taught me that everyone deserves dignity. She taught me to watch out for scammers." Julian shot back. He signaled for the waiter again. "Check, please. We're done here." The waiter arrived with the black leather folder. Julian opened it, glanced at the total, and then did something that made Eleanor's blood run cold. He looked at Thomas. "We're splitting this, right?" Thomas groaned. "I guess, but I'm not paying for her water." "Fine," Julian said. He took out a crisp $20 bill and threw it on the table. "That covers my half and the tip. You handle the rest." Thomas counted out his bills slowly, muttering under his breath about how expensive the restaurant was getting. They left the money sitting in a pile on the table. Neither of them looked at Eleanor. They stood up, adjusting their suits, preparing to walk away and leave the crazy old lady with the bill for the water she hadn't even asked for. "Wait," Eleanor said, standing up too. Her legs felt shaky in the ill-fitting shoes. You're leaving? Here? In the city? It's dark outside. We have cars," Thomas said dismissively. He didn't offer her a ride. He didn't ask if she would be safe walking to the bus stop in the cold. Julian reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He fished around for a moment and pulled out a single, crumpled $5 bill. He tossed it onto the table next to the water glass. It was an act of supreme arrogance, tossing charity to the peasant. "Take the bus," Julian said coldly, "and don't follow us." With that, they turned their backs on her. They walked away without a second glance, their laughter floating back to her as they greeted the maitre d' at the door. They were leaving their mother, a woman they claimed to love, alone, hungry, and humiliated, all because they thought she had no value to them. Eleanor stood there for a long moment, staring at the $5 bill. It was the most insulting money she had ever seen. Around her, the restaurant continued its normal rhythm, oblivious to the tragedy that had just played out at the corner table. Her heart wasn't just breaking. It was shattering into a million pieces. She looked at the backs of her sons, walking out into the night, and she knew she couldn't let it end like this. She couldn't let them leave thinking they had won. She had to show them who they really were. She reached up and wiped the smudge of dirt from her cheek. She squared her shoulders. She was done being the victim. It was time for the truth. Eleanor stood by the table, her hands no longer shaking. The fear that had gripped her chest just moments ago dissolved into a cold, hard resolve. She watched the back of her sons' heads as they waited for the host to retrieve their coats. They were laughing, likely making jokes about the crazy old woman who had bothered them. They looked so confident, so superior. It made her sick. She reached up to her hair and pulled out the bobby pins Martha had painstakingly put in. She shook her head, letting her white hair fall in its natural, well-styled waves. Next, she took a napkin and scrubbed the smudges of dirt and grime from her cheeks and forehead. With each wipe, the face of Eleanor, the respected matriarch of the family, re-emerged. She stood up straight, pulling her shoulders back. The slump of the defeated, poor woman vanished. In her place stood the woman who had built the empire they were so eager to inherit. She signaled for the waiter, a young man named Peter who had watched the entire scene with a sympathetic frown. He hurried over, looking hesitant. "Ma'am, is everything all right? Did those men leave you?" he asked, his voice kind. He looked at the pile of money Julian and Thomas had thrown down, the crumpled $5 bill sitting next to the stack of 20s. Eleanor looked at the money and let out a short, bitter laugh. "They didn't leave me, Peter. They just forgot who I was." Peter looked confused, but Eleanor didn't explain. She reached into the hidden pocket of the ragged coat and pulled out a small, sleek wallet. From it, she extracted a black card with platinum edges, the kind of card that commanded immediate respect in any room in the city. "Please take this money back," she said, pushing the cash across the table toward him. "I won't be accepting their charity. And please, run the bill for this table, and for that booth over there, on this card. I want to leave a very generous tip for you and the kitchen staff." Peter's eyes went wide as he saw the name embossed on the card. He looked from the card to her face, his jaw dropping slightly. Mrs. Eleanor? I didn't recognize you. You look so." "I know, Peter. I know," she said gently. "Now, do me a favor. Don't bring the machine to the table. Bring the receipt over to those two gentlemen by the door. Tell them there is a problem with their payment." Peter nodded, still looking bewildered, and rushed away. Eleanor watched him walk over to Julian and Thomas. They were already putting on their coats, looking impatient. Peter said something to them and pointed toward the table. Julian rolled his eyes, clearly annoyed that the help was delaying him. He marched back to the table, Thomas following closely behind him. "What is the problem now?" Julian barked, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of nearby diners. "We left more than enough cash. Can't you count?" Peter stepped aside, gesturing to Eleanor. "The lady says she is paying for the meal, sir." Julian turned to look at the crazy woman, ready to shout at her again. But the words died in his throat. He stopped mid-step. Thomas bumped into him from behind, grumbling, but then fell silent too. They stared at her, really stared at her. The posture, the clean skin, the sharp eyes that were currently drilling holes through their souls. The ragged coat was the same, but the woman inside it was completely different. "Mom," Thomas whispered, the blood draining from his face. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Hello, Julian." "Hello, Thomas," Eleanor said. Her voice was steady, cutting through the silence like a knife. She didn't sound like the helpless beggar anymore. She sounded like their mother. Julian blinked rapidly, his brain trying to catch up. "Mom? Is this some kind of joke? Are you doing a reality show? Why are you dressed like that?" Thomas let out a nervous laugh, trying to force the situation back into a box he could understand. "You got us, Mom. Wow, you really had us going. I didn't even recognize you. That makeup is incredible." They were waiting for her to smile. They were waiting for her to say, "Gotcha," and laugh it off, just like she used to when she would playfully hide their Easter eggs. But Eleanor didn't smile. She just looked at them with an expression of profound sadness. "It wasn't a joke," she said softly. The silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Julian looked at the money still sitting on the table, then back at her. The realization was dawning on him, and the horror was beginning to show. You were the one." Thomas stammered. "You were the one asking for help." "I was," Eleanor said. I told you I had lost everything. I told you I was hungry. I told you I had nowhere to go. We didn't know," Julian shouted, his voice defensive. "How could we do that to you if we knew it was you?" "Mom, that's not fair." "Fair?" Eleanor asked, her voice rising slightly. "Is it fair that you treat a stranger with such cruelty, Julian? Does it matter who is under the makeup? I was a human being asking for help. I was an old woman with no one to turn to. And you looked at me with disgust." Thomas reached out, trying to take her hand. "Mom, we were just kidding around. We were having a bad day. We would have helped you if we knew." Eleanor pulled her hand away. "No, Thomas. You wouldn't. You threw a $5 bill at me and told me to take the bus. You said I made my bed and I should lie in it. Those were your true colors. You weren't acting. You were showing me exactly who you are." Julian's face turned red with anger, but it was the anger of a trapped man. "Fine. You tested us. We failed. Are you happy? Can we go home now? I have a meeting in the morning." Eleanor looked at her eldest son, and in that moment, the last piece of her heart that held out hope for him shattered. He wasn't sorry for what he had done. He was just sorry he got caught. He wasn't worried about her feelings. He was worried about his pride. "I'm not going home with you, Julian," she said. "I don't think I want to go home with either of you." "What are you talking about?" Thomas asked, panic creeping into his voice. He wasn't looking at her face anymore. He was looking at the black card in Peter's hand. He was thinking about the will. He was thinking about the trust funds. "Mom, stop it. You're scaring us." Eleanor sighed, a sound of deep exhaustion. "I have spent my entire life taking care of you. I gave you everything. And I realized tonight that I made a terrible mistake. I taught you that you were entitled to money, but I forgot to teach you how to be human beings." Peter returned with the receipt, placing it gently on the table. Eleanor picked up the pen and signed it with a flourish. "Mom, please," Julian said, his voice dropping to a whisper, realizing the gravity of the situation. "Let's just forget this happened. We'll drive you home. We'll order pizza." "It's too late for pizza," Eleanor said, picking up her old purse. "And it's too late for apologies that aren't real." She paused, looking at the two men she had raised. They looked handsome and successful, but to her, they looked hollow. "I came here tonight because I was lonely," Eleanor admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I wanted to know if you loved me, or if you just loved what I could give you. I got my answer." She picked up the crumpled $5 bill Julian had thrown at her earlier. She held it out to him. "Here," she said. "You'll need this for the bus. Because I'm cutting you off." Julian stared at the bill as if it were poison. "You can't be serious. The inheritance? The company? I'm selling the house," Eleanor said, turning toward the door. "I'm going to travel. I'm going to find people who actually enjoy my company. And as for your money, well, you two are smart, successful men. You don't need my help. You told me so yourselves." "Mom," Thomas shouted, stepping forward to stop her. Eleanor turned to Peter. "Peter, could you please call me a taxi? My son seemed to be busy." Peter smiled kindly. "Of course, Mrs. Eleanor." Right away, Eleanor walked past her sons. She didn't look back. She didn't look to see if they were crying, or shouting, or trying to come after her. She walked out of the warm restaurant and into the cool night air. As she stood on the sidewalk waiting for the cab, she finally felt light. The heavy burden of pretending to be someone she wasn't, and the heavy burden of loving ungrateful children, was finally gone. It broke her heart to do it, but as the taxi pulled up, she knew it was the only way she could survive. She got in, closed the door, and drove away into the dark, ready to start a new life that belonged only to her.